So, welcome everyone to Disaster Lifelines. It's the Payments as a Lifeline podcast where we connect capital in chaos to make for a better world. I'm super excited to have with us Justin Knighten. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself. He's on the PaaL Advisory Council. We met in a very interesting way. So, Justin, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Well, Kirsten, it's so great to be with you. I always love having conversations with you about problems and solutions. So this is very fitting that we're here in this space. We met at a recent United Way summit on disasters in which you gave a keynote, and I was blown away by how you humanized the fintech conversation as it relates to disasters and what people need and how we can all be doing this work better. And so my background in communications, both in emergency management and working with cross-sector partners, natural fit for us to come together today to have this conversation. And so I want to launch right in for your listeners with the first question around what is PAL and how did it come about?
Justin, I love it, but I'm going to make you back up
Okay.
because your background
Okay.
is fabulous. So please
Okay.
share a little bit. As I was reading through, I was like, oh my goodness, you've got to be kidding.
Okay. So I'll mention,
Go ahead. Hey, we're recording.
okay, great. Well, I think that my background a little bit deeper is that I formerly, most recently, was the External Affairs Director at FEMA as Associate Administrator for the Office of External Affairs, running the whole operation for what that means for the agency with our external partners, customers, stakeholders, members of Congress, elected officials from all levels of government, tribal nations, states, territories, local government, media, crisis communications, partnership development, and before that, really did a lot of work in the state of California in this space, emergency management. And before that, I ran a public affairs firm where I really worked at the intersection of policy, business, and communications, and really helping brands, organizations drive solutions in a way of navigating the world around them. Currently, in my relationship with POW and the way we're working together is as the sustainability fellow for the George Washington University of a Sustainable Future, where we're really looking at solving really difficult, hard problems with solutions that move all of us forward. And so thrilled to be here in that capacity, thrilled to have this conversation and sharing a little bit more about my background.
Absolutely. And for anybody, look him up. That you left out all the awards and we don't have that much time, but everybody go look him up. And before we get into the kind of topic, you had said that at that keynote at United Way about humanizing fintech. So all of my fintech friends out there, this is really about fintech for good. It is how we bring the financial technology, the banks, the insurance, the payments into disaster and humanitarian aid to assure, and then to assure we meet our mission. So I'll hand it
Love
back to you.
that. I love that. And so the origin of PAL, take us there a little bit. When did this really birth, become a thing, become something that really organized into what it is today?
So birth is a really good term. We say it was conceived in Katrina
Mm,
and born in COVID.
whoa.
So, Katrina. So I was at KPMG in banking, and we had one of the only practices that focused on serving the underbanked and the unbanked, which was really, really unusual back then. Katrina hits, the largest NGO in the world calls that weekend and says, hey, I heard you can get money to people without bank accounts.
Mm,
And there's between 50 and 70 million people in the US who don't have bank accounts for a whole lot of reasons. So we scrambled, did a one time, just under $1 million pro bono project and
mm,
converted that NGO over to being able to pay people without bank accounts electronically. And at the time, it was it was a Visa or a MasterCard. So that was literally 20 years ago, right? Flash forward, very, very few are using any kind of this sort of electronic payment.
mm,
And it serves our mission is to assure that funds are delivered to the right person at the right time for the right purpose with the data to prove it.
mm.
So way different than a gift card or putting money into somebody's account, and we'll get to that in a minute. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love from conceiving to birthing, from Katrina to COVID. I mean, these are monumental moments in our country's history where fintech has been there all along and maybe becoming more and more front and center, top of mind for folks, which speaks to the work that PAL has done and all your member companies are doing.
Well, thank you so much for that because part of um, the challenge has been trying to be, for those who aren't familiar with emergency management, you are, but there are emergency operation centers. There are groups of people who are together for decades and they know each other and the companies sign contracts to be there and be ready. I was in Harvey. Those electric trucks right outside of the zone did not just pop up because it was a good idea, right? These
Mm,
are long-term contracts. But financial services has never been at the table. And so much of what we talk about is that money is as essential as these other things that are pre-planned. So that's been part of our challenge is invite us to the table so that we
yeah.
can make sure that that money gets right person, right time, right purpose before, during, and after. And I was one of them before getting involved in disaster. I thought, okay, the disaster hits, the news trucks leave, somebody must have taken care of it. And that it could not be farther from the truth. Long-term recovery, as you know, can be 5 to 7 years.
Kirsten, what you're speaking to is how long some of these recoveries take. 5, 7, sometimes 20 plus years. And those of us in the space and the communities that are impacted by these events can no longer have that be okay, right? We all have to be better about fast tracking recovery in the early days, right? When it flips from response to recovery, and to make sure that we don't have these long timelines. That's all of our responsibilities. So I love that FinTech has that top of mind. And that speaks so directly to your mission, right? Delivering funds to the right people at the right time for the right purpose. And what I love is the data to prove it. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, coming out of financial services and fintech for years and out of healthcare. So, if anybody's ever had a flexible spending account card, right? It's a Visa or a MasterCard. You can go spend it, but it's not good at certain places.
Mm,
You can't go to the bar, right? So, the idea with the data to prove it, it's entirely up to the funder. If it's the federal government, state, local, NGO, corporate foundation, sports foundation, whatever, they can say the money's going to go out and people can spend it however they want to. And with that, there's data, aggregated and anonymized data that'll show like a pie chart. So 15% went to fuel and 12% to groceries. So it's really important that people know how their money was spent. Did it match the mission? There's also an option for the funder, and we have some faith-based organizations that will say they can spend it anywhere Visa or MasterCard is good, but not at a casino or not for adult entertainment. There's so a few
right.
things. It's entirely up to the funder. How do you want it to be? But the NGOs we work with and the nonprofits, the biggest thing they appreciate is the funds are delivered fast, safe, and with dignity. So one of my favorite stories was the LA fires. One of our nonprofit partners is IRUSA, and they said there were 30 different nonprofits and agencies in this room and thousands of people coming through. And the survivors came through and they had to do intake at every site. And they did the intake at IRUSA at their table and immediately loaded it to their phone as a Visa.
Mm,
And he was telling the story. There was a like 80-year-old woman. She said, I've never used a wallet before. So they helped her load it in and showed her how to use it. And she got up and she said, so the money will be there in a couple weeks. And he said, no, you can go right now. And she was in tears because she could go get her prescriptions.
yeah. Yeah. It's a game changer. I think about my own experience. I think all of us that do this work think about our own experiences. It gives us the backbone of the framing of humanity, right? And I think about my experience growing up in a very Latino, Mexican American community, household with a very much immigrant mentality. And the story that I always use when I'm working in emergency management or having these conversations is very much the story that was my family, which is think of the single mom who's working multiple jobs, who's raising kids, who's trying to put food on the table, a house and shelter over their head, who's taking care of sick parents. who's living paycheck to paycheck, who can't afford a huge car disaster happening to them, or the flat tire that happened last week that they're still trying to figure out how to pay for. Right? These are real situations, and that in a disaster, when you need access to capital quickly to help cover all these different emerging costs that just pile up very, very, very quickly, having this type of program in place solves so many of your problems that, quite frankly, government can't do alone. And so, part of the superpower of PaaL that I have grown to learn and really appreciate, Kirsten, and your leadership and the work that you're doing as a convener, right, across sectors, government, philanthropy, nonprofit, and business. Talk to us about the work you're doing as a convener and how your call to action is resonating across people who are coming from different spaces and places and ideas and goals to kind of bring that all together.
Well, thank you for that. It really is a team effort because we've got to have so many of the fintechs involved. But you're reminding me when you say call to action. So when we were together at the United Way event, and before I went on stage, I asked Marcus, "Can I talk about our call to action, this hashtag GSD?" And and he said, "Well, are you gonna cuss?" Like, no, no, I'm gonna cuss on stage. But this is get stuff done. And we came up with deciding to use this in September last year. We were convening in DC before you and I had
Mm-hmm.
met. And we had government agencies, federal, state, and local. We had the fintechs, we had the insurance companies, we had corporate foundations, we had corporates, lots of charities. And we said, look, we don't want to come here again next year and say, oh, hi, how were you since last we spoke? And so this has become a rallying cry. So Operation Hope is one of our favorite partners. And Marlon was there at the September event. And I gave him, we've got lapel pins, right? So I gave him a lapel pin. And he said now when they need to get stuff done, this is the rallying cry, right? It means we're going to cut through bureaucracy. We're going to find a way to do it. And it's so a friend of mine had this painted. This thing is gigantic. It's way behind me in my office.
I love it. I love that. Get stuff done. I love it. That S word might change when,
Yeah.
depending on the circumstance, but right now it's get stuff done. And Marcus, Marcus, who you just mentioned, for those who don't know, Marcus Coleman, who's the Vice President of Resiliency at United Way Worldwide, who's also a partner in this work, who I knew when he had you as a keynote, I just instantly knew that I had to meet you and get to know PaaL and become immersed in this space because I myself, even having worked in emergency management, didn't fully appreciate the work that the fintech space is doing and the contributions that they're having. Any final words or comments about how you started, where you're going, that you want to leave the audience with today?
Um, Call to action. So if you're taking the time to watch this, you're interested in the topic, right? If you are a fintech, financial technology company, payments, banks, um, go to email me support at paalpay.org. It's PAALPAY.org. Everybody go to the website. You'll see testimonials and use cases of how this is actually working. And if you are a funder of some type, your federal, state, or local government, maybe you're a community foundation, corporate foundation, email as well. And let's talk about how we can run a small pilot just to show you how this works in your own environment and how it is transformational in how it reduces the amount of accounting time. It gets money to people faster with dignity. And it makes people want to give more money to you because you are showing accountability and transparency. And we are coming up into another bad disaster season. And we as a country are better than what we've been doing. We can do better, but we've got to convene and get stuff done now before disaster season.
I don't know a better way to end because that was flawless. And those of you who are still with us know that Kirsten is a dynamic leader and you want to join her movement because she cares so much about this work, that her members care so much about this work, and we have to solve these problems together. So thanks for joining us and thanks for the conversation, friends.
Justin, it was fabulous to have you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.